Now I'm going to be promoting and championing this particular release. This act Audrey has like 30 something albums listed on Rate Your Music, but it's this one that drew my attention, partly because of this strange kind of haha album art it has here. I figured, why not? And the genres listed on Rate Your Music, which I'm going to read out aloud very shortly, they quite intrigued me. I wanted to hear what a mishmash of all these sounds would have sounded like in 2023. 2nd of January this was released. What does 2023's music sound like? Well, a little bit like the early 90s in some circles of the world. We'll get to that in a moment. Let me read this aloud. Slowcore, a bit of Red House Painters perhaps. Experimental rock. What, we're talking Henry Cow? Post-rock. Ooh. Are we talking like the Mogwai Sigur Rós sort of thing? But then the secondary genres listed: glitch, shoegaze, and EAI. It stands for electroacoustic improvisation. It's extremely interesting stuff. I don't know how I would describe it. If I was given no descriptors, I would describe it as kind of a neo-slowcore shtick. Perhaps, yeah, it is post-rock, noise rock in a way. It assumes that this genre, in a sense, is the only appropriate form with which to discuss contemporary foggy malaise, because it isn't as though there's just a linear path forward now. We've got the weight of the prospective free encyclopedia that is the internet, which is, human history plus the possibilities of the future and the present. They're all around us, and it's just, it doesn't feel like there's a linear adventure going on anymore. It doesn't feel like there's as much a sense of progression or narrative in the development of human art now. So groups like Audrey are coming up with this apotheosis of the slowcore post-rock sound in order to try and figure out, well, if there's nothing left to experiment with, let's double down on the feelings that these guys were, and they thought the early 90s was a time to feel nihilistic, Mark Kozlak, Kevin Shields, or whomever. Well, try now. This album is not an easy listen, I imagine, for many. It's a kind of genre that I'm already accustomed to. I'm quite a fan of, and I have been since I was maybe 18 or so, the early Red House Painters albums. And so for me, this was something familiar yet new and exciting listen within a paradigm I was already quite familiar with. And I'm interested in the noise rock experiments, or if you're experimental rock, Fred Frith, or and I really like a lot of the post rock that's been out there, God Could Speed You, Black Emperor, and the aforementioned Sigur Rós. I think some of this music is really interesting. I find myself listening to this music in contexts that don't tend to be active listening. I listen to music a lot if I'm browsing the computer, if I'm conversing with a friend, on a drive, I'm working on my job, and so often I'm distracted by some other kind of predominant activity, whereas the music is secondary. And this is what I think allows me to, and it's a conscious decision to play music in a lot of these contexts, because I find it easier to appreciate something. I feel like with active listening, one invites in too many expectations, and so instead with this kind of, when the music is a bit more secondary, it's and you listen to it in a secondary context a few times, you find yourself becoming familiar with it slower than with active listens, but you're more motivated to actually listen to it. You're more prospectively excited about the prospect of listening to it. And maybe I'm not one to enjoy active listening as much as some others. I'm not I could never sit down and listen to an album and just enjoy it in the same way that I watch a film. Like that's never happened to me, and I've always kind of hoped it would. It never really. Albums, it's more of a appreciation. It's almost just like mood supplements rather than the holistic experience I receive. Maybe it's just I receive when I'm watching a film. Perhaps it's just because I feel I can pull apart and dissect a film's choices in a way that music, I'm more just a subservient listener, just trying to figure out if I like the taste of it or not, honestly. And I love how this tastes. If early 2020s nihilism, post-COVID, post the absolute ramshackle, nuts 2010s madness, what do we feel now? Everyone's potentially trying to scold us on what the right way to do is. You know, everyone's against each other. No one's friends. What do we do now? I don't know what we do now, but it sure as hell feels like what this album sounds like. It really does. I hope it isn't too nihilistic a prospect, but I can only feel so nihilistic when I'm admiring something like this. I'll say that. Thanks, Audrey. I really appreciate it. Oh, check out the link on Bandcamp, and special thanks to Countercuts, a YouTube channel which uploaded this album, with which I first listened to it. Although I would implore everyone to explore the Bandcamp at your own leisure and perhaps even consider making a purchase. If you're so inclined, of course. I think they've deserved it, and they have many, many, many more releases. I can't say I don't know how many of these I'll be familiar with by the end of the year, although I'll make a stab. I'll start heading toward that direction. It's just a bit intimidating, I must admit. Though I see some of it on their Bandcamp. Well, I suppose it's worth... Yeah, we'll see how we go. If any of this at all sounded appealing to you, do visit one of the links in the description if you're so inclined. Thanks again, my friends.